If you've noticed your legs feeling weaker, wobblier, or more tired than they used to be, I need you to stop scrolling and listen carefully, because what I'm about to share could change everything. I'm Dr. Thorne, and over the years I've seen this pattern again and again. It always starts small. A little more effort to stand up from a chair, a little less balance on the stairs, a little more fatigue after a short walk. Most people brush it off as just getting older. But here's what nobody tells you. Leg weakness is often one of the very first warning signs your body gives you, long before anything else shows up. The good news? This isn't something you have to just accept. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 6 powerful foods you can find in almost any grocery store that can help rebuild strength in your legs, support your muscles, and help you move with confidence again. So stay with me till the end, because food number 4 is one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important one on this list. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you really paid attention to your legs? Not how they looked, but how they felt. Not the ache after a long day, but the subtle stuff. The extra second it takes to push yourself up from the couch. The way your knees seem to negotiate with you before you climb a flight of stairs. The tiny wobble when you step off a curb that you catch yourself from, laugh it off, and never think about again. Most people don't pay attention to these things until they can't ignore them anymore. And that's exactly the problem I want to talk to you about today. Because in my experience, leg weakness rarely announces itself with a dramatic event. It doesn't kick down the door. It slips in quietly, disguised as tiredness, disguised as, I just need more sleep, disguised as, I'm not as young as I used to be. And because it's so easy to explain away, it becomes one of the most overlooked warning signs the body gives us. Here's what makes this so important. Your legs are not just there to carry you from one place to another. They contain some of the largest muscle groups in your entire body: the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the calves, the glutes. These muscles are metabolically active powerhouses. They influence how your body regulates blood sugar, how efficiently you burn energy, how well you maintain balance, and even how your circulatory system moves blood back up toward your heart. When these muscles begin to weaken, it's rarely an isolated event. It's often a reflection of something bigger happening beneath the surface. Reduced circulation, nutrient deficiencies, nerve signaling that isn't as sharp as it used to be, or a slow decline in the body's ability to repair and rebuild muscle tissue. Think about it this way. Your body is remarkably good at protecting the organs it considers essential for immediate survival: your heart, your brain, your lungs. When resources become limited, whether that's due to poor nutrition, inactivity, or simply the natural slowing of certain bodily processes, the body starts making trade-offs. And unfortunately, the legs are often first in line to feel the effects. That's not a coincidence. It's a pattern I've observed repeatedly, and it's one that researchers studying mobility and aging have documented as well. Reduced strength in the lower body frequently shows up before more obvious signs of overall decline become apparent elsewhere. This is exactly why I want you to stop thinking of leg weakness as a minor inconvenience or an unavoidable part of getting older. I want you to start thinking of it as information. Your body is talking to you. It's telling you that something in your daily routine, your nutrition, or your movement patterns needs attention. The people who listen to that signal early, who take it seriously instead of dismissing it, are often the ones who maintain their strength, their independence, and their confidence well into later decades of life. The people who ignore it often find that small weakness compounding, month after month, year after year, until simple tasks that used to be effortless become genuinely difficult. And here's the part that I think gets lost in most conversations about aging and mobility. This trajectory is not fixed. It's not a sentence you've been handed. Your muscles are incredibly responsive tissue. They adapt to what you give them, for better or worse. Feed them poorly, neglect them, and they will weaken. But give them the right building blocks, the right nutrients, the right consistent support, and they respond, they rebuild, they strengthen. That responsiveness is why paying attention to those early signals, that subtle wobble, that extra effort on the stairs, matters so much, and why the food choices we make can play such a direct role in either accelerating that decline or reversing it. Let's talk about what's actually happening inside your legs when they start to feel weak, because once you understand the mechanics, the role of food becomes obvious. Muscle strength doesn't come from nowhere. Every contraction, every step, every time you push yourself up out of a chair, your muscles are relying on a steady supply of specific nutrients, amino acids to rebuild muscle fibers that break down during daily activity, minerals like potassium and magnesium to allow those muscles to contract and relax properly, and adequate blood flow to deliver oxygen to tissue that's working hard to keep you moving. When any one of these pieces is missing or insufficient, your legs are the first to feel it, because they demand so much from your body just to function normally. This is where food stops being just fuel and starts being medicine, in the truest sense of the word. Take something as simple as leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard. These aren't just healthy in some vague, generic sense. They're rich in nitrates, compounds that your body converts into nitric oxide, which helps relax and widen blood vessels. Wider blood vessels mean better circulation, and better circulation means more oxygen and nutrients reaching the muscles in your legs, especially during activity. This is why so many endurance athletes have quietly relied on foods like beets and leafy greens for years. Not as a trend, but because the science behind circulation and performance is well established. Then there's protein, and I want to be clear about something here. Protein isn't just for bodybuilders or people trying to build visible muscle. Protein is the literal raw material your body uses to repair muscle tissue that breaks down every single day through ordinary movement. Foods like eggs, fish, poultry, and plant-based sources like lentils and chickpeas provide the amino acids necessary for that repair process. Without adequate protein, your body simply doesn't have the building blocks it needs to maintain, let alone strengthen, the muscle fibers in your legs. Over time, this shows up as exactly the kind of weakness we're talking about. The harder time standing up, the wobble on the stairs, the fatigue that sets in faster than it used to. Nerve function is the piece people almost never think about, yet it's just as critical. Your legs don't just need strong muscles, they need a nervous system that's communicating clearly with those muscles, telling them when to fire, when to stabilize, when to catch your balance. This is where foods rich in B vitamins become essential. Foods like eggs, fish, and fortified whole grains support the health of the myelin sheath, the protective coating around your nerves that allows electrical signals to travel efficiently from your brain down to your legs. When nerve signaling starts to falter, even strong muscles can respond a little slower, a little less precisely, which is often what's really behind that unexpected wobble people experience and quickly dismiss. And then there are minerals like potassium and magnesium found in foods like bananas, avocados, nuts, and seeds, which play a direct role in muscle contraction itself. Magnesium in particular helps muscles relax after they contract. Without enough of it, people often experience cramping, tightness, or a general feeling of heaviness in the legs, especially later in the day or after periods of activity. Potassium works alongside sodium to regulate the electrical signals that trigger muscle movement in the first place. When these minerals are lacking, the entire system that allows your legs to move smoothly and powerfully starts to lose efficiency. What I want you to take away from this is that leg strength isn't just about exercise. Although movement certainly matters, it's about giving your body the specific raw materials it needs. The proteins, the nitrates, the B vitamins, the minerals, to keep muscles rebuilding, blood flowing efficiently, and nerves firing with precision. These aren't exotic superfoods or expensive supplements. They're foods sitting in grocery stores everywhere, foods your grandmother probably cooked with, foods that modern nutrition science has simply confirmed the wisdom of. I want to address something that trips up almost everyone when they hear about foods that support leg strength: the temptation to think bigger is better, faster is better, more is better. People hear about a food that supports muscle repair or circulation, and their instinct is to overload on it. Eat massive portions for a week, maybe 2, expecting some dramatic transformation, and when that transformation doesn't materialize on schedule, they give up entirely and conclude that none of it works. I've watched this pattern play out more times than I can count, and I want to save you from making the same mistake. Because it's not the size of the change that matters here. It's the consistency of it. Your muscles, your circulatory system, your nerves, none of these systems operate on dramatic timelines. They operate on biological timelines, and biological timelines are built on repetition. Think about how muscle tissue actually rebuilds itself. Every day your body is breaking down small amounts of muscle fiber through ordinary use and rebuilding it. Hopefully a little stronger than before, provided it has the materials to do so. This isn't a process that happens in a single afternoon after one nutrient-packed meal. It's a process that unfolds over weeks and months, one meal at a time, one day at a time, with your body slowly, steadily accumulating the benefits of what you consistently give it. This is precisely why someone can eat a perfect nutrient-dense meal on a Monday, feel nothing different on Tuesday, and mistakenly conclude that food doesn't make a difference. Of course, they don't feel different after one meal. That's not how any of this works, and honestly, this is the single biggest reason people abandon good habits before those habits have any chance to prove themselves. They're expecting a light switch, when what they're actually working with is more like a dimmer, slow, gradual, almost imperceptible day to day, but unmistakable when you look back after a month, or 3 months, or 6. I like to compare it to compound interest, because the analogy holds up remarkably well. A small deposit made once doesn't accomplish much on its own, but that same small deposit, made consistently, day after day, week after week, begins to build on itself in ways that become substantial over time. The magnesium from today's handful of almonds doesn't just disappear, it contributes to a foundation. The protein from this morning's eggs isn't a one-time event. It's one repayment in an ongoing process of tissue repair that's happening constantly, whether you notice it or not. When you add the nitrates from yesterday's spinach to the potassium from this afternoon's banana to the B vitamins from last night's salmon, you're not creating isolated moments of nutrition. You're building layers, and those layers accumulate. This is also why I always encourage people to think in terms of what they can sustain rather than what sounds impressive. A person who commits to including 1 or 2 of these strengthening foods in their meals most days of the week, consistently, for months, will see far better results than someone who attempts a rigid, extreme dietary overhaul for 2 weeks and then abandons it out of exhaustion or boredom. Sustainability beats intensity every single time when we're talking about processes that depend on repetition to work. Your legs didn't become weaker overnight, through some single dramatic event. That weakening happened gradually, through months and years of small deficits accumulating quietly in the background. It stands to reason, then, that reversing this process follows the same gradual logic, just moving in the opposite direction. So, as you think about incorporating the foods we're discussing today, I want you to release any expectation of overnight results, and instead focus on something far more powerful and far more achievable, showing up for your body a little bit, consistently, day after day. That's not a compromise or a lesser approach. That is, in fact, the only approach that has ever reliably worked when it comes to rebuilding strength that took time to fade. Now let's talk about the food that almost never makes it into these conversations, and honestly, that surprises me every time, because in terms of impact, it deserves to be near the top of the list, rather than buried somewhere people never scroll to. Most of the attention in nutrition conversations goes to the obvious players, the proteins everyone already associates with muscle, the leafy greens everyone already knows are good for you, in some general sense. And to be fair, those foods absolutely deserve their reputation. But there's a fourth food I want to bring into the light today, because in my experience, it addresses something the others simply don't touch as directly, and its absence from most people's daily habits may be quietly working against every other effort they're making. Here's why this one matters so much. We've talked about muscle repair, we've talked about circulation, we've touched on nerve function and the minerals that allow muscles to contract and release properly. But there's another piece of this puzzle that rarely gets discussed, and it has to do with inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind that doesn't cause obvious pain but quietly persists in the background, can interfere with how efficiently your muscles repair themselves and how well your circulatory system delivers nutrients where they're needed most. This is a slow, silent process, and it's one that many people never even consider when they're wondering why their legs feel weaker than they used to, despite eating what they consider a reasonably healthy diet. This is exactly the gap that food number 4 fills, and it's a gap that becomes more significant with age, more significant with inactivity, and more significant for anyone who's already noticed early signs of the leg weakness we discussed earlier. Reducing that background inflammation doesn't just make you feel generally better, it directly supports the environment your muscles need in order to actually use the protein, the minerals, and the other nutrients you're giving them. You can eat all the right building blocks in the world, but if chronic inflammation is interfering with how your body processes and utilizes them, you're not getting the full benefit of the effort you're putting in. What makes this food particularly interesting to me is how ordinary it is. It's not some rare ingredient you need to track down at a specialty store or order online from halfway across the world. It's something most people have encountered countless times in their lives, likely without ever connecting it to leg strength or mobility at all. That disconnect is precisely why it gets overlooked so consistently. People associate certain foods with certain outcomes based on what they've heard repeated most often. And because this particular food hasn't been part of the popular conversation around muscle and mobility, it simply doesn't come to mind when people are trying to make better choices for their legs. I've found that once people learn about this food and understand the mechanism behind why it matters, something shifts in how they think about nutrition more broadly. They start to realize that supporting the body isn't just about hitting a checklist of muscle foods and bone foods and heart foods, as though these are separate, isolated categories. The body doesn't work in silos like that. Inflammation affects circulation. Circulation affects muscle repair. Muscle repair affects strength. Strength affects balance and mobility. Every system is connected to every other system, and this fourth food happens to sit at an intersection point that influences several of these processes simultaneously, which is exactly why its impact tends to be larger than people expect once they start including it regularly. I mention this one specifically, ahead of the others, because I want you paying close attention when we get to it. It's easy to skim past the ingredients that sound familiar and assume you already know everything relevant about them. But familiarity is not the same as understanding, and in this particular case, I think you're going to find that there's considerably more going on beneath the surface than most people ever realize. So there you have it, the foods that can help support your legs, your strength, and your independence for years to come. Remember, this isn't about chasing a dramatic overnight transformation. It's about showing up for your body consistently, meal after meal, day after day, and trusting that those small, steady choices compound into something meaningful over time. Your legs carried you through every stage of your life so far, and with the right support, they can keep carrying you with strength and confidence for many more years ahead. If this information was helpful to you, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video where we dig even deeper into topics like this one. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these foods surprised you the most, or which one you're most excited to start adding to your meals. I'll see you in the next one.